Hello and welcome to Mel on the Street. I'm your host, Mel Schaefer, and today I'm very excited to be talking to Janice McAfee, the widow of John McAfee. How are you doing today?
I'm doing very well, thank you. How are you doing?
I'm good, and it's great to have you here.
Thank
So
you.
I want to spend this time focusing on you and your project, but to introduce the audience to the new cryptocurrency that you have, or fairly new, a couple of months old now. I wanted to ask you if you could just start with a bit of the history from back in 2013 when you met John in Miami and how things came to be.
Okay, so I actually met John in December of 2012. It was right after he was deported from Guatemala to America. And I met him, he said it was the day after he was deported. And I, at the time, was working as a prostitute on South Beach. I was in a very abusive situation. I had a pimp who was very abusive towards me. And so, John helped me to escape that situation, long story short. Yeah. And so, we just continued our relationship after that. I was a little surprised by that just because, once I've learned who exactly he was, I was just surprised that he wanted to keep me in his life, for whatever reason. And obviously, just because I was a working girl doesn't mean that the sex had anything to do with it, because it didn't. It definitely was not that at all. I think he saw something in me that I still struggle to see in myself sometimes. Um, and so he took a chance. He took a risk on that. And so here I am now, what, almost 10 years later, out of that situation, and just trying to do my best to honor his memory and the relationship that we had.
Yeah, so I watched the documentary, Running
Mm,
with the Devil. So
yeah.
I want to ask you, first of all, do you identify with that idea that you were running with the devil, even if it was at the beginning? Because I saw in the documentary, John fell in love with you right away.
Mhm.
But you said that you didn't. You saw an opportunity.
Yeah. Yes. Well, because the opportunity was not an opportunity to make money or an opportunity to swindle my way into his life. It wasn't that at all. The opportunity that I saw was that I could escape the current life that I was in, because nobody wakes up one day and says, "Hey, I want to be a prostitute when I get older." Like that's no woman's dream, right? No matter how they may try to sell how positive and how uplifting it is to be liberated sexually. That's great for some people, but in the line of work that I was in, it wasn't that at all. It was very dark, and it was just very dark. Yeah. And so that was the opportunity that I saw, a potential to just allow John to see me, and whoever that was, because at the time I didn't really know who I was, but just to see me for who I was. And if he wanted me around, then cool. But if he was to say, I don't think this is working out, you should part ways, I would have done that as well. My life might have turned out differently, but I don't know, because he didn't say that. Um, so for me, that was the opportunity. Now, I will say, no, I didn't fall in love with him at first, but I liked him. I really, really liked him. I was smitten immediately, but for me, because of the line of work that I was in, love was just such a foreign concept, and, believing that he could actually love me was a foreign concept, like I'm very aware of, like I've seen Pretty Woman like so many times and it's like, it's a movie, right? And so I didn't really identify with that, I just didn't feel like that it was possible, but definitely smitten from day one. And from there, it just grew into eventual love, and I fell in love with him. And I think what helps facilitate that was that he gave me the space. He gave me a safe place and the space to kind of figure out what I wanted to do with myself. There was no pressure. He, he treated me like like I was the universe to him, like I was the best thing since sliced bread to him, like that's how he genuinely treated me. And I never felt that way before. And coming from where I came from, there was a lot of guilt and a lot of shame there, you know, and, and so it just seemed impossible. But like I said, because he gave me the space and I had a safe place where I didn't have to worry about um, my pimp coming and hurting me or hurting my children. It just allowed for me to kind of breathe, and just to be free and to figure out that I was able to be free from that situation all along.
Yeah, and it looked like life with John was very free. You guys sort of
Yeah.
did whatever you wanted in a way, right? Like you're on a boat going to Spain, and then of course, like jumping ahead a little bit, but then John is indicted, and one of the charges is for cryptocurrency pump and dump schemes, and he winds up in prison, and he calls you and says that I love you, and that he would call you back later, right? Is that what happened?
Yeah, so we spoke yes, we were in Spain together and we spoke every day while he was in prison, 3 times a day. The calls were only 8 minutes apiece. And, I was tweeting for him from his account. So he would read out the tweets for me. I would record it and then I'd get them tweeted out for him. So he wasn't tweeting from prison himself. Sorry to ruin the mystery about that, but, it was just me tweeting for him.
Or from the
And
dead, right?
yeah, right, right. He's not doing that either. Um, so that day when, he went to court for the judges were going to give their ruling of whether or not they were going to grant the extradition, to which they did grant the extradition. But this was not a surprise to any of us. John had a team of 5 attorneys, 2 Spanish attorneys, 2 American attorneys, and a British attorney because he had dual citizenship. So the attorneys were working on the appeal already, before the judge's decision. So we already knew what was going to happen. And John was disappointed, but he wasn't in the depths of despair because of their decision. Not at all. Um, he knew his attorney was coming to see him. One of his Spanish attorneys was coming to see him the next day. They were going to map out exactly, because I had told him kind of the gist of the plan, for the appeal and all of that. But, the attorney was going to go and see him and discuss that in detail the next day. And so we spoke our regular times. Actually, that day, the day that he died, we spoke earlier in the morning because he was going to court. So he wanted to talk to me before court. And after court, like I said, he was disappointed, but it wasn't a surprise to any of us. And so, yes, the last thing that he said to me was that I love you and I'll call you later. And so, obviously that didn't sound like someone who, was planning because he would have had to have had this idea right after court, right? Like this couldn't have just been something that just sprung up into his mind. And I should also say that, he wasn't in any danger of being extradited the next day, the next week, month, or even year. There's going to be appeal process, right? So, um, so what I would do, I would collect, news articles. I would go online and collect news articles, and just share them with him just to kind of keep him up to date of what was happening in the world. So I was doing that. And then I went on Twitter, just scrolling. And then I got a DM and in all capital letters, it said, "Oh, OMG, tell me this isn't true." And immediately my stomach dropped and I don't know why I thought of John, but I just immediately went to Google and that's how I learned that John was dead, from Google. So the prison didn't even contact his attorney. We all found out. The attorney, found out online, and so did I. So.
And so that since that happened and up until now, that has been your position that he must have been murdered.
I don't believe it was suicide. I don't believe it was suicide at all. Not at all. Just because I know John and he was a fighter. Like I said, he wasn't in the depths of despair as some people like to make out. He wasn't at all. He wasn't an unhinged, crazy person, paranoid. He wasn't any of that. People were actually after him. There were actually things that were happening to him. This was not all made up in his mind. And the evidence and the proof of that is the fact of how he died. Now, what they don't talk about in the news is what actually was found in the prison's investigation report into John's death. And what happened was that they actually performed CPR on him with the noose still tied around his neck. So you can watch the video because they have the surveillance video. You watch it and they're doing the chest compressions. They have the, whatever that contraption is called over his mouth and they're pumping air. Right. And it's not until after that when you look through the pictures, because they had to take pictures of the cell and everything. And you see in the pictures on his body, he still has the noose tied around his neck. So they wouldn't have taken those pictures of his cell before they performed CPR on him. Right. So that means then that they performed CPR on him with the noose still tied around his neck, tight enough to kill him. So, I'm not a doctor, right? But I have taken CPR classes and I do know the first thing that you're supposed to do when you're rendering aid to someone is make sure the airway is clear, and so, so that is why, but before I had that information, it was just my gut instincts that was telling me that there's something wrong here. There's more to this story. And so no, I don't believe it was suicide. Whether he was murdered, or you want to call it negligence, I don't know. I'll let the internet discuss that, but I have my own theories, but I'd rather not share them publicly, no, I don't believe it was suicide.
Well, thank you for taking us through that. I really want to focus on your project. You sent me a link to the podcast, a new podcast, and I watched episode 2, and we'll show a clip here.
First rule, breathe. Oxygen is free, and rumor has it helps with thinking, and thinking is the last thing they want you to do. Second rule, stop feeling. The market doesn't care about your tears. It doesn't care about your dreams. It will chew you up, spit you out, and not even blink.
One of the quotes that John said is, "The market doesn't care about your tears." Right? And so this podcast, I'm gonna let you describe it, of why it's so important to you and how that links then to the cryptocurrency. I think the cryptocurrency was launched in January, right?
Yes, January 22nd.
And then this podcast is sort of an evolution because John is not still alive, but he is living through the cryptocurrency, and this is meant to celebrate his legacy, right? And the things that John believed in.
Yes.
Because he had very strong beliefs on security, obviously, with the antivirus software, and also there was anarchy. I mean, the episode is called Navigating Chaos. Yes. The podcast, if I have that right, is called Waltzing with Anarchy.
Waltzing with Anarchy. Yes. Sorry, I'm just excited about talking. Yeah, because the AI actually came up with the name of the podcast, the titles for each episode and all of the content that is in the podcast. So right now there can't be like a conversational interview right now. So we're working that out with the AI. But so right now it's basically just little snippets of the AI kind of giving a speech, if you will, right? And we're just calling it a podcast. But it's really, really cool because it's really kind of beginning to capture more John's spirit and his messaging, which is, I think, is still very important and still very relevant to today. So the token that we launched, AINTI, we launched that January 22nd, and the Josh Case, who was the project manager for this project, he brought this to me because he actually worked with John in the past on 2 of his other projects, which is the Ghost, Privacy, and Whacked token. And so when Josh brought this to me, I thought it was a phenomenal idea, and I thought it would be a great way to bring the privacy products and tools that John was wanting to implement while he was still alive to bring that to the market. And so that is why the token was created. It was kind of created because Trump and Melania had created their own meme tokens. And so it just became clear that maybe the government's stance on crypto might have softened, especially since, everything that happened with John. And so that was why we were kind of just riding the wave of that situation. But the token in itself is actually used for the products that we're releasing or that we have released. So far you can purchase with your AINTI tokens, eSIMs, gift cards. We have a Solana mixer. We did an NFT drop. We have a merch store. We have all of these things that are coming. We're going to do cross chain with Ethereum, I'm sorry. And that's coming up, I believe, this week. So there's a lot of things that we're working on just to kind of bring privacy to the crypto space because it's very, very, very important. So these ideas were John's ideas that he worked on before he died, but he just wasn't able to bring them to market. And that's what I'm trying to do now.
Okay, so I was going to ask you about so that's the history of how it came to be.
Yes.
And then you launched it in January, and then there's the roadmap. There's been you've been hitting your targets. The next one that you have is March 21st, and that's what you just said, the Sol and
Yes.
Ether, and then the next one is antivirus encrypted email.
Yes.
Can you tell us what that will be?
So basically, it's just similar to Proton Mail. Right. So you will be able to send your messages privately. You won't have to worry about anybody reading your emails. And I think it's very important in this day and age just to have somewhere where you can transact as far as it relates to your crypto privately. I think that is super, super important because the space as it is right now, it doesn't allow for that. Everything. And that's the beauty actually of the blockchain, right? Is that everything is there and it's, it's a record that cannot be manipulated. But at the same time though, you don't want people knowing exactly what's in your wallet. We have an uptick of people being kidnapped, people being, people finding out where they are and, holding them hostage for their crypto, it's very dangerous. And so we're trying to close this gap. But on a personal note, for me, it's important to me and why I got excited about crypto when John first, introduced me to it is because I was just thinking, as in the situation that I was in with my pimp, if I had a way to safely save money that I could then use to get away from him, I would have done it years ago, and a way to be able to have a cell phone and to move around in the world without him being able to track me. Think of all the women that are men and women and children that are in situations that I was in, but maybe not even being sexually exploited, but just in abusive relationships. The beauty of just being able to move around privately and knowing that you don't have to worry about this person coming to find you digitally. Now you would have to change some other habits that you do online, as far as social media goes and all of that. But at least you can have some tools that can begin to help you take your privacy back,
Absolutely. It's super interesting. And I think the relation to having a communication, a way to communicate with complete privacy is also something that's very, very interesting and exciting. Another thing I wanted to ask you about, going back to the media, so that huge media explosion almost in January when there was a tweet coming from John's X account. So it was being covered very negatively by the media. One of the reasons that one of the things they were talking about was the supply, that there was a problem with the supply. Can you talk a bit about what the market cap is, what the supply is? They had said that there was only one, that it was all transferred to insiders before it ever became public, and then only 1.6%, I think they said, was available for trading. So can you talk a little bit about that or the evolution that it's been from then to
Okay, so I'll try to, because this was before my involvement with the project. So from what I understand, there was a V1, and they were working on these same ideas, but they needed to, I don't know. They decided to take a break on it. And because I then got involved later in January, they wanted to roll out a new version. And so the, I guess the insider information that they're talking about were all people who were holding the tokens, who were holding the V1 tokens. So I believe there were like something like 200 wallets of the previous V1 holders. And so that's what you see there as far as that goes. And everyone to my understanding, everyone that was holding the V1 token received the V2 tokens, the same percentage that they had. Now, obviously, this, because the supply was considerably smaller than what the V1 was originally. As far as the token amount, it may look different, but the percentage was exactly the same. And I do believe all of the V1 holders would have made some money because the V2 was actually worth more than the V1. So, a little hectic, I would say, but nothing untoward happening.
Right. And so since then, so you became involved. How has the coin evolved from then, and what's your role in it?
So right now I'm just a creative designer right now. And right now as well, the coin is just doing what it's doing, in the market. We're not trying to manipulate it at all. I'm not trying to pump the prices. I'm not trying to fill anybody's bags or send this to the moon. That's not at all what we're doing. So what we are doing is just building, right? We're trying to meet our roadmap goals, which we have been. And, as once the roadmap is complete, then we're going to go back through and kind of fine tune things and just make sure everything's ready to go to market for the masses. So right now this is kind of, testing ground, if you will, for us. Obviously the project is live and you can trade and you can use it. But obviously the word has not gotten out yet. And we're also in a very bearish cycle right now, which is kind of normal for crypto. And people are still unsure about things. People are maybe unsure about me, and so this is why I took the step to lock down my 10% of, AINTI tokens for 2 years. So, you don't have to worry about me rugging the project, and nor do you have to worry about anybody doing that. We are super excited. All of us are very excited about this project. Josh worked with John for many, many years. And so for him to be able to bring these products that John wanted to the public, it's just a no-brainer. Like there's literally no one in this space that's filling this gap, and of course, who else would do it other than John McAfee? But because he's not here, that's kind of the role that I'm taking on. This is kind of my involvement with the project and obviously, creatively, my input that I give as well.
So is there a cryptocurrency that this could be compared to, and also how is this cryptocurrency so different than other cryptocurrencies?
I don't know that I could compare it to another crypto. I would just say that what's different about it is that there's utility to it. You can use this token to buy things with. You can use this token to buy eSIMs and gift cards. You can use this token to, some people were ordering Uber Eats with the token, so there's lots of things that you can do with it. You can purchase obviously the merch with it. There's just a lot of different things that you can do with it. And so that's the difference. We're going to have our VPN coming out. We're going to have our encrypted email coming out. We have a Solana mixer. We have also, the cross chain between, Sol and Ethereum. So our AINTI and Ethereum. So this is, I guess that is the difference, whether it's comparable to another cryptocurrency, I don't know. But that is just kind of, I would say, the difference between other meme tokens, because we kind of started as a meme token. So this is how AINTI is separate and different from the other AINTI token or meme tokens. Sorry.
Right. So if people wanted to buy AINTI, what would they do? Where would they go for people who don't?
You can go to antivirus.ai and you can, just kind of follow the prompts and you can purchase it there. And you can also purchase our eSIMs and gift cards there as well. And the merch is there. Everything, you you need to do or want to do with AINTI, you can go to antivirus.ai and it's really cool. It's a really cool project. You know, I'm very excited about it. Um, because I know definitely this is what John would have been involved in for sure, because we need privacy. We have to have privacy, especially as it relates to our financial um, safety. You know, we have to have that. And I think it's really scary that, you know, people don't even really realize how, if someone is inclined to, they can unwind and figure out who owns a wallet and they can be at your doorstep, you know, if you're not taking the proper precautions to make sure no one can do that. And so being able to kind of plug those holes a little bit is, for me, this it's what I'm, you know, passionate about, you know. And again, like I said, because of other, you know, because of my history, I want to be able to answer that call for women and men and children that are in these sort of situations that need help just getting away, because sometimes that's all you need. It's just a way to safely get away and collect your thoughts and just breathe and not have to worry about looking over your shoulder. And so that's what we want to provide. It's not about people being able to use our products for criminal activity, you know, or they're trying to, you know, hide fraud or something like this is, because I know a lot of people talk about that as it relates to privacy, but privacy is an inherent right. We should all you know, feel comfortable with saying, hey, you know, I want this to be private. I don't have to share everything with the world, you know? You know, I don't have to be transparent in that way. This is my financial safety that we're talking about. And so to be able again, to answer that call, I'm really excited about that.
So just lastly, was John involved in the initial programming of AINTI?
Okay. So he was not involved in the initial, he wasn't involved in any way in that sense. But these products that we're releasing that Josh has, you know, that's on the roadmap are actually the ideas that he and John spoke about. You know, this is something that John spoke about many years. So these were things that were in the works for, I believe, possibly for Ghost, but you know, Ghost is its own sort of project. You know, it's its own ecosystem, you know, and not everybody wants the totality of privacy that Ghost would offer, because Ghost would be similar to what Monero is, right? And so not everybody's looking for that, you know, and so this is what AINTI is. It's to answer that for people. Maybe you just want a little bit of privacy, or maybe you just don't want people reading your emails, or you want to get a gift card or something, you know, privately without anybody knowing what you're purchasing. So this is what AINTI is. And again, they were John's ideas, not specifically packaged in the antivirus, but definitely his ideas that he worked on before he passed.
Okay, well, thank you so much for joining us.
Mm-hmm.
It's been
Thank
a pleasure
you.
speaking to you.
Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.